Beautiful, good rock and roll, man.
Cool. All right, guys, today we have on the founder of JFit Media, Jay, and mate, thanks for coming in today because you have got a really powerful backstory I think a lot of people are going to relate to, and it's about business, it's about burnout, it's about competing, about health, about training. There's so many things we can unpack, mate, but for the people who haven't met you yet at home, would love to give them a bit of a background of how you got here sitting in this seat today. What got you here today?
Yeah, awesome. So a little bit of backstory about me. I spent 12 years as a paramedic, worked over on the tactical response unit in London for several years, attending to some pretty crazy cool shit over there, from terrorist attacks to burning buildings, to a mass amount of stabbings and deaths and shootings and gang crime. So it was a pretty interesting world. And from there I kind of reached a point where I was like, I want to do something a little bit different. So I thought, I'll become an online fitness coach and I'll get into bodybuilding.
Gotcha.
And one thing led to the next, and before I knew it, I ended up in a position with a camera in my hand, working as a full-time photographer and videographer, as a my own business owner.
So, and there's always, obviously, if you're paramedic, we've got that background of health there as a foundation. Were you training as well at this time, or did training come later afterwards? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so for me, I've been training for around about 15 years now. It's always just a massive part of my life. I got so much benefit from it, and I think it all stemmed initially from a lot of insecurities, I dare say, of wanting to have the ability to protect myself, to protect others, to not be bullied and picked on.
I think that's a really common part of a lot of people when they start. Like I was a very overweight child growing up as well, and you see it with different people, like where they're a lot of time coming from adversity and being able to, I suppose, use, like, through health and fitness, we can improve ourselves and improve that, not just how we are outwardly, but inwardly too. That's common, man. Thanks for sharing that. So you went through a really high intensity job there where you're helping people. It's literally life or death on a daily basis. What did that look like, being in the trenches of that job? You're living in a different country, you're working crazy hours as a paramedic, I'm assuming, and everything is, you never know what you're walking into. So what did that feel like in a normal day for you? What did a day look like for you over there?
Yeah, look, so basically for me, I basically turn up to work and you wouldn't know what that day was going to entail. And in the initial stages of that, where you're in a state of being inexperienced, in a new place, in a big city. I come from country town. There's no such thing as elevators. There's no such things as roundabouts. Just even driving around a 6-lane roundabout, let alone in an ambulance with lights and sirens with a sick passenger in the back, was just absolutely mental. So the changes of experience of going from a country boy that's, grew up in the country, through to country university, to bam, big smoke, hustle bustle, extreme chaos.
God, it would have been. That's absolutely wild, mate. And so when you're dealing with these people, did you find, like, what were some of the things that I'm sure a job like that, you have to take that home. Like, that has to follow you back at the end of the day. Did that have any other flow-on effects to how you went outside of work as well? Like, having a job like that, were you, like, I could only imagine how just under the pump you'd feel and how just on edge you'd be all the time. What did it look like for you trying to live outside of a role like that?
Yeah, look, I think everyone deals with different stress in different ways. And for me, I was never someone that would take things incredibly personable, I guess. I was at work, I had a task to do, I was so task orientated that, yes, some elements of some particular jobs, sometimes I would go home and think about, but in the greater aspect of it, my actual personal attachment to it, for the most part, wasn't there unless that particular job shared a lot of similarities to my lifestyle, who I am, and what I do. So.
And switching gears from there, so you found yourself over in London, you've come back home, and getting into online coaching and trying to get into the health and fitness space again. I suppose you found yourself in competing then, right? That's where that led to, then getting into competitions and actually competing in bodybuilding. Was that there, or did that come later on after the business? When did that happen?
Yeah, so I always had an interest in, I guess, bodybuilding, but never even thought about it competitively until a fella, Wayne, come up to me and he basically said, do you realise the genetic potential that you have with what you've built over these years? You should, test yourself and go step on stage and compete within the FMG or WBFF at the time, bodybuilding, just to see what you can do. And my thought process was kind of like, I guess I probably should. And that was the absolute life-changing point for me, because my career changed out of ambulance and moved into initially coaching, which then progressed into what I do now.
Yeah, right. Okay, so were you comp prepping whilst you were like a paramedic, or did you start comp prep when you got back and got into videography and starting your business?
Yes, I started once I basically finished up, or I was doing it more so on a casual basis in the mines at the time. So
busy.
Just redirected that focus.
It's busy. It sounds like it's busy. So you've had a pretty full plate by the sounds of this. Because comp preps, anyone out there who's competing knows it can consume your entire life. Like because every second of the day is programmed, right? Like we're tracking sleep, steps, training, we're tracking our nutrition, we're weighing our food. It's a lifestyle. It's not a sport. I agree. Like I competed through NABA, WFF for quite a while there, and it does. And there's a lot of parallels, I think, with competing in business, with the discipline, with being able to do things consistently, show up and do hard stuff regularly when you don't feel like it. For you, how do you think competing set you up for business success? Or do you think it didn't relate at all? Like, how was competing for you in the grand scheme of starting your business and lots of change and all those things going on around you?
These two things are massive and go hand in hand, and it comes down to the mindset that someone has. And some people are cut out for it, some people aren't. And some people have this ingrained within them. And that's a high achiever mindset, where you're forever wanting to develop your body, your mind, your connections, your friendships, your finances. Everything starts to tie in. And whether that's something that you learn and you adapt to through life, or whether that's something you're born with, I don't know, because you do see the different types of people in the world where that's okay. Some people are happy to be in their 9 to 5, live a comfortable life. Their family is their purpose, and that's great. But then you get other people like probably yourself and me who are so entrepreneurial driven, always looking for the next best thing, whether you want to improve yourself or you want to improve other people or you want to have a purpose to make some change.
And isn't it the ultimate, it's the ultimate chessboard business, right? I love it because it challenges you in so many ways. It makes you have to try and improve yourself. You have to do, you can't make it through without facing your own demons, looking at your own interpersonal work you have to do, because it all shows up in business. You know what I mean? Like every limitation you have will show up in your business somehow, right? Like if you don't like conflict, well, tough luck. Business is going to be every day. You've got some degree of fires you're putting out. It's with it's people management as well. It's working with other people, building teams. It's trying to grow other people as well. It's trying to interrelate with having time management. So many things it puts under pressure that you don't normally get in a standard 9 to 5. So I love speaking to people who've got that high performance growth mindset, because my big obsession is high performance health. How to make high performers be able to go that distance and really see how far I can help them go by removing any handbrakes that I can see stopping them. And it's become really satisfying because so many people, when you talk about mindset, that's really interesting, because I met a guy once and he was saying, it's like my mind can outwork my body. And he was like, I have to actually be careful that I don't go as hard as I want to, because I will break myself. He goes, I've done it many times where he ended up in hospital with panic attacks. He ended up running to the ground because he had worked himself literally into the floor, multiple times. And he's like, my mindset is almost stronger than my body is at this point in time. And so for him, I remember after having a great conversation with him saying, mate, we need to look at your foundational stuff that will let you go as much as your mindset wants you to, which is great. I love you mentioned mindset. That's huge.
And as you have a lot of experience within this field across, firstly, your own Primabolics, one of, Australia's massive, well-known built foundations across helping people to achieve better hormonal balances, hydration, performance, mindset, function,
100%,
and, recovery and sleep and all these kind of things. So as a business owner that was, I guess, adapting and changing your ways, what was it that helped you to pull that trigger to be like, you know what, I'm going to help people within this area that have these issues?
Mate, it's funny. I started, so when I very, very first began, I was a young bodybuilder but I suppose coming from that overweight background, I had struggled with weight. Like I was nearly 100 kilos at 12 years old, right? So even from literally before even teenage years, I was struggling with, trying to get my health in check and trying to get myself back on track, right? And even when you're not old enough to realize what you're doing, and then I went on through and I joined the army at about 17, and we spent 4 years in the Army Reserves as well. And just blunt force trauma my way to get that weight loss down to a point where I probably went overboard, and at my height, I was 70 kilos, right? So probably over course corrected, right? But essentially, I've been mindful of, I suppose, body composition and training and trying to change things literally from my teen years. So it's been 20 years now. And what what I suppose was interesting to me was that I had always, because I got into this from that background, and then as I got into training and then into bodybuilding eventually, I think it's really interesting to see that things you think are the big levers, like the 1 hour a day you're in the gym, I would go in thinking that's the thing that changes everything, right? But it's interesting. I learned that the things that make the most change in the body were actually the hormones, and this was because I was a bit of a bookworm as a kid, and I went and did my Bachelor of Science at Newcastle University here, did my 4 years there, and I actually spent 5 years as an environmental scientist. So I could read literature, I could read scientific studies, I could read papers. So when I first got into training and first started looking at supplementation that existed, I could read the actual studies on how these things worked and what pathways they worked on, and I knew the biology and the chemistry, and I could read all that with my science background. So I started realizing the things that people actually needed help with was the really fundamental big rocks, right? The big levers. And quite often it was like cortisol was a massive one. Like our body stress hormone. Huge problem for so many people. I grew up in this region. We've got mining, massive source of employment. Shift work, massive, heavy industrial, high stress, high stakes work environment. We're working you're on site at 6 a.m., but often it's an hour and a half drive. So you're leaving at 4:30 in the morning. So you're up at 3:30 if you want to train, up at 3 a.m. even if you want to train him beforehand, and you don't get home till 7 or 8 o'clock that night. So you're awake for 15, 16 hours at a time, and you're doing that 5 days a week. Like it just breaks people in half, and do shift work on top of that, right? So around here, a lot of shift workers, jails, paramedics, nurses, emergency workers, cops. This area has a monster amount of shift workers and people with high stress jobs. So a lot of people growing up around, they grew up around friends, parents, those guys were all in a really high stress lifestyle all the time. So one of the biggest handbrakes I saw early on that made me want to produce products to help people was the stress piece. And it's why a lot of people start a supplement company and they do a pre-workout first, right? I did a non-stim pre-workout, which back then, 10 years ago, didn't exist. People were asking me, well, what does it do if it doesn't have caffeine? Like, what the fuck? Why does that exist as a product, right?
Yeah.
And even back then, I saw so many people were so fried back then, right? And now the pace of life is 10 times faster. But back even 10 years ago, I could see it in people that I grew up with. I could see it in their parents who were doing the shift work for the long term. Mate, some of these people were in such bad health. They would come home from a night shift, driving home from work to help themselves get to sleep after night shift. They'd drop into the bottle shop on the way home and literally crack a few long necks and drink on the way home because alcohol was the only thing they could do to switch off. Like,
it's funny you say this. How you're talking about shift work, miners, that kind of industry. When I was working in the mines for a number of years there as a paramedic, I saw exactly that. The blokes would go to work, finish their 12-hour shift at 6 a.m. in the morning, get an hour bus out. What would they do? They'd be on the porch drinking beers for the next 2 to 3 hours. Now, that was just a lifestyle that they lived between smoking, drinking, work, the stress of being away from their families, marriages falling apart, losing their finances through that process. And the amount of chaos that would cause in their lifestyle almost always put them back at square one.
It is, and it's this ironic thing that I see in high performance circles too, mate, not even just mining, right? Because mining's got amplifies things because it's got the stresses there too, but then also people aren't helping themselves. They're doing the lifestyle outside of that heavy industrial job, is also not serving them the relationships as well, how they're showing up for their family. It's a whole. You're dead right. It's this entire broken system, unfortunately, and so many people, particularly men in mining, they just don't seem to have the skills to, I suppose, know how to get themselves through that sustainably and how to look after their health and look after their sleep quality. And so often, I worked in a local supplement store. And it was, we had people that would come in and they'd be buying pre-workouts just to get through their day at work. Like they're 300-400 milligrams of caffeine, and they'd just take it while sitting in a dump truck, just driving a haul road back and forth on the same road for 12 hours. And they're having a pre-workout, and they're buying, literally slabs, not just a can. They're buying, a 12-pack of energy drinks, to take to work. Literally just put in their crib bag. They were living on caffeine, the uppers, on the way to get them through the day. And then, as I said, alcohol. Literally, they used to carpool and take turns on who could drive home so that they could drink on the way home. They're leaving site, cracking long necks while driving home. And it's this crazy cycle of just... And when we talk about burnout, I talk about stress and things that happen as well. You're dead right, man. It flows. They bring that home with them. Then that also flows onto relationship breakdowns, which flows onto their personal lives just go to shit. Their work life goes to shit. Everything, their health as well. So they're burnt out, foggy-headed, tired, sleeping poorly. Often with the guys, the testosterone's tanking. With women, shift work just crashes hormones really badly.
Just on that, when I was doing the coaching, I ended up getting about a group of 30 to 40 fellas down at the mines.
Really? Yeah,
And I
right.
said, righto guys, if we're going to do this coaching process, we'll get some blood work done.
Ah.
Of the blood work that I did of these 30 to 40 men, which were anywhere from the ages of 20 through to about 55, 60, around about 30% of them all had tanked out red line testosterone.
Oh, mate, I'm so glad you went there. This is such a... And testosterone has for some reason got this big stigma around it, right? Where people don't talk about it. It gets like testosterone gets associated with, I suppose, steroids or something, or it gets associated as like this taboo topic. When, like in other countries as well, like in America, for example, if there are whole longevity clinics, there's $1 billion industry built around helping men optimize health long term, and that means looking at testosterone and HRT and all these things. But here we have this weird thing where we don't talk about it, right? And particularly as men, that becomes problematic because it's so common to see low testosterone. I have guys literally in their 20s, and they'll come back, and the range is say for total testosterone, let's say it's 8 to 30, right? Yep. And I'd see guys at 12s, 14s, 16s. Free test is 250 to 1,000. I'd see guys come back at 356, 402, 289. And these are guys who are in their 20s. It's that if you got your free testosterone in your 200s, that's what my 70-year-old dad would have. You know what I mean? And it's because it's all this lifestyle. It's the alcohol, the shit sleep, the shift work, the stress, the not eating properly to support their needs, the massive amounts of stimulants and caffeine they're taking to get through the day. It's the huge hours they're working. It's like all this pressure is just running them into the ground. And we, especially like same thing in business too, you've got this obligation to look after your health because you're not working a standard 9 to 5 at a desk job where you can, heat up your meals normally. And so like you're in mining to yourself, right? Like you don't, you most of the time you're eating cold meals or you've got hours and hours between breaks. If you might only eat once or twice in a 12-hour shift, it's such a different environment, and so many men struggle with health up there. It's huge. That's amazing. What are some of the things that you saw when you were doing the blood work with these guys? What other stuff jumped out at you when you had this group of 30 or 40 guys in mining that you were coaching?
Yeah, just your classic stuff of, high cholesterol, some of them were like pre-diabetes, and then obviously blood pressure there. Another one being magnesium as well, which I've had issues with in the past myself during the competing times. So just a number of kind of blood markers being, out. So,
it's so
I guess from your experience as well, like, diving into this industry and trying to fix and resolve a few solutions. What is your kind of take on some of these things and how you can actually help resolve that?
Yeah, because those are some really good ones you touched on, like pre-diabetic, right? For example, like type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease. It's not an actual disease, right? Like I suppose, and I suppose even you look at type 1 diabetes as well, where it's like it's inherent. You're born with pancreas that's not functioning properly. Type 2 diabetes or insulin resistance is where your body is no longer very good at breaking down and utilizing carbohydrates, right? So if you think about what carbohydrates do for our body, they should give us energy. They should break down into glucose in the body, and our pancreas then puts out insulin, which is a carrying hormone, which transports those sugars, puts it into the cell so you can have fuel to then burn and go do life. Problem is when people have the crappy sleep, when people are inflamed, when they have the alcohol, they have the higher body fat, the visceral fat starts creeping up, and those things from the shift work lifestyle, the mining work lifestyle, or even just normal people too. I see this all the time. And then they're sedentary outside of that. Like I said, they're not going home and going to the gym. They're going home and sitting down and having a few beers, having a counter feed, going to the pub and having a counter feed, or having some rubbish food, or having some takeaways or junk or whatever it is. Well, their body gets less and less efficient at being able to utilize those nutrients, right? So they have to put out more and more and more insulin to get the same job done. And over time, their body goes, well, I have buckets of insulin being put in my bloodstream. It becomes resistant to it, right? So it stops being as effective. And what happens is our muscles will stop receiving the glucose, unfortunately, as efficiently. So, instead of shuttling that glucose to where it's most beneficial in the muscle tissue, where it can actually be used for performance or training or energy or whatever, unfortunately, it becomes resistant over time, and instead it starts storing it in fat cells. And then we start building body fat. And primarily, it starts around the midsection. So when you've got high cortisol or insulin resistance, the areas you see that is centrally distributed body fat. You always see the stomach just start to pack it on. And you see it with guys where they might look quite skinny arms and legs, but they have a huge big beer belly, right? And so it's that classic body shape where it's like they got a big spare tire, but there's bugger all muscle mass there. And it's because cortisol is breaking down their muscle tissue. It's actually breaking down the muscle in the extremities, but it's then storing body fat because their insulin resistance is there as well. So you've got this perfect storm of like they're not building muscle, they're breaking down muscle, and they're building fat. And long term, that leads to metabolic disorders like the type 2 diabetes, massive inflammation, systemic as well. Immune system goes to shit. Quite often, if you leave people that long, you even see autoimmune diseases start coming out of that. So you get all of these sort of, stray off effects of someone living in that sort of lifestyle. And so some of the things you can do, you asked, how can you fix it, right? Well, you have to, if you've chosen a high stress lifestyle, whether that's running a business, whether that's going through comp preps, whether that's putting yourself through the competing and the rigors of bodybuilding, whether it's, working full on jobs, high performers, executives, people who are trying to get more out of life, you have a disproportionate amount of responsibility compared to the average person who isn't doing those things to look after your health. Because if you aren't optimizing your health, it will become the thing that stops you from achieving those goals, right? It will, whether you want it or not, it will stop you. And you see this with people where they'll ignore it, and one day they get the wake up call from the doctor and something's gone horribly wrong, right? Or they can't get out of bed one morning, or they just find themselves collapsed in a pile of exhaustion, or they have the autoimmune disease flares up, or they get glandular fever, or they get something breaks, right? They're at the gym 3 days a week and something just snaps. They have injuries become more common. They're more inflamed. They're holding more fluid. Their metabolism is slowing down, so they're stacking on fat. They feel rubbish. They're not sleeping. They can't switch off. All this stuff just starts piling up to a point where it becomes unbearable, right? And it stops you from being able to show up properly. So to help it all, it's like you've got to look at those pillars. Getting the blood work. You said you recommended that. That's brilliant, right? At least every 6 months, get blood work done. Gives you a snapshot into your biology and go, right. And the things to look for, testosterone in men never gets talked about enough. Almost everyone is on the lower side, right? Like that I speak to, and whether you're in your 20s, 40s, doesn't matter. Testosterone is declining in society at large now, right? Like we're seeing it decline. It naturally declines 1% to 2% per year, but we've seen in the last 50 years, it's declined at an average of 45% in men. So it's nearly halved. Like if you compare to a man in the 1950s to now, the median testosterone level is nearly half. Right, like we used to have a median testosterone level back then of like 750, 850, and now the median is 350, which is fucking crazy. That's what a 70-year-old man would be about 250 to 350, would be where you'd be in your 60s, So we see now teenagers with the testosterone of their grandparents, and it's crazy because we've got the environmental burden, we've got phthalates, BPAs, chemicals, we've got pollutants, we've got the stress, we've got the inflammation, we've got the sedentary lifestyle, the alcohol, we've got all the stuff. So yeah, man, how do you help it? Like bloods, look at testosterone, total testosterone and free testosterone. And don't just settle for it's within the normal range like your GP says. Actually optimize that. We want that on that top end. Men, no less than 20 in total testosterone and no less than 500 in free, right? We want to be pushing you to the top end. We're not just here to get average. We want you to thrive.
So just on that, obviously, jumping to things, sometimes people do immediately say, oh, that needs to be fixed with TRT.
Yeah, super common. Yeah.
That's where they'll go smack bang. But in reality is sometimes, even from your experience, can this be significantly improved? Firstly, by obviously training, lifestyle, drinking, smoking, but then secondly, supplementation. So I know that there's a big thing on the market about sometimes test boosters and if they work, if they don't work, and other products. And how does that interplay? Is it a case of like you actually take some specific products which will help reduce your cortisol, which actually works in return by bringing down your bringing up your testosterone? Like, are test boosters bullshit? Because I've heard online so much that they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's a massive area. Like, and TRT will not fix the broken system underneath it, right? Like if you've got a guy who's still, you can take TRT, and if you're still drinking alcohol 3 nights a week, you're still sleeping shitty, you're still under eating, or you're not eating the quality of foods you should be putting in your body, you're not exercising regularly, you're getting up in the same place anyway. It might buy you some more time, but you're going to end up in the exact same place again because your body can't utilize that hormone properly, convert it efficiently. It'll bind it up, it'll convert it to estrogen, it'll do things that you don't want to happen with it. What you have to do is before you, and TRT probably doesn't get taken seriously enough. I've had probably 8 different guys now in the last month or 2 where I've done Zoom consults with them about their blood work, and they'll be exactly this case story where they're like, they're mid-range or low on testosterone, they feel crappy, they want to feel better, and you look at all their markers and it paints a picture of the lifestyle that you could get them there without any need for having to inject testosterone 3 times a week for the rest of their lives. And the easy thing is they'll come to me and often go, hey, I would like to try TRT first. And I go, look, if you're going to inject yourself 3 times a week for the next 50 years, why don't you give me 12 weeks So optimize it naturally. So when that looks like is looking at sleep quality is a big driver for guys. If you have, they did the study on Marines, right? So they looked at US Marines, and these guys are pretty tough dudes, right? Like they're Marines. So they put them through 2 weeks of sleep deprivation, and it wasn't sleep deprivation as in what you might think from a military study where they literally keep them awake for 2 weeks. They let them sleep 5 hours a night. And for a lot of people, you wouldn't assume 5 hours is a sleep deprivation study. And this really reframes for a lot of people when they say, oh yeah, sleeping 6 to 8 hours a night is fine. Well, 5 hours is what they used in clinical studies to induce sleep deprivation, right? So anyway, side quest. So 5 hours a night, and they put it for 2 weeks. Their testosterone lowered the equivalent of 10 years of aging.
Wow.
And it took 8 weeks to get back to normal, just to get to baseline. Right.
That's purely just on the basis of
just
sleep
on
alone.
sleep, no other changes. They just went, all right, let's change nothing else, and we're just going to sleep 5 hours a night instead of our usual. And yeah, lowered testosterone, the equivalent of aging 10 years. Right, and these are hard-ass dudes, right? Like they're in Marines. They're active, they're fit, they're healthy guys. And it took, 2 months to get it back to baseline levels. So even sleep, man, massive. If you're not sleeping 8 hours, anything sub that is hurting testosterone. Guarantee it. The data supports it every time. And then you also look at what sleep will do for, cellular repair, lowering inflammation, cortisol management. And we see whenever cortisol is high, testosterone goes down as well. We spoke about that earlier on. So if we can manage stresses and manage sleep just there alone, I know I can get a 10, 20% bump in testosterone easily without changing anything, right? And if stress is really high, like if they're in a job where it's acutely high stress all the time, man, it's probably more like 20, 30, 40% testosterone increase you can get by managing stress levels. And that's supported by the data. Again, looking at things like ashwagandha, for example, is a natural botanical that can really help this situation. It will lower cortisol by 32%, which is really big. And in the same thing, increase testosterone by 15%. So you can see that lower the stress 32, boost the test 15. Tonkat Ali, another herb used in testosterone boosters commonly, it will increase free testosterone by up to 37%. Huge increase in free testosterone, but it lowers cortisol 17. Almost exactly the same. 32, 15, 37, 17. Almost exactly the same numbers. It's this balancing beam. Stress and test, those guys go hand in hand. So you can definitely, just by looking at stress management and sleep quality alone, you can optimize things, right? And then you can look at some low-hanging fruit like magnesium. If you're magnesium deficient, you cannot produce testosterone efficiently, right? Same as zinc. If you don't have adequate zinc levels, you cannot produce testosterone. You synthesize the hormone using zinc, magnesium as cofactors. So making sure you have adequate magnesium. And you mentioned those biomarkers were quite low before when you were talking to those minors, right? So what were you seeing when you were coaching people there? Where was it? Was it like deficient? Was it super low? Was that common that you'd see?
It was like red line low, like sub 6, for testosterone levels.
Wow.
So basically non-existent. And
wow.
A lot of these guys did have unhealthy lifestyles, drinking, smoking, night shift, not eating right, not training right, and
wow. 6.
Yeah, it was mental, and they never even processed or thought about it.
Yeah, it's not even on the radar.
And when it come to light, a lot of these guys were like Kiwi dudes, like, oh shit, bro, no wonder my missus isn't happy with me. And it's just like, damn, see, it's just, it's just not known or not thought about or not considered. The impact that has on someone's life, even myself, I've been through periods of, post-comp and stuff like that in transition phases where I'm running around with no testosterone as well. And I'll become a completely different human being that I don't love. I don't have the drive. I don't have the confidence. I don't have the motivation to get up in the morning. My sleep is poor. And, a large contribution to that would be purely of the test being so suppressed.
Oh, and it's really common in competing as well. And I think it's a part of the mental health issues that people get competing as well afterwards, where it can really take a toll on your mental health when you've done, gotten in the best shape of your life, gotten on stage, there's all the cheering and the accolades and all, you're posting your content, you're looking awesome in your stage pics. But then once once the hormones go, a lot of guys, unfortunately, you're seeing testosterone drop. Then you see cortisol increase because testosterone is very protective of cortisol. If you have high testosterone, you can withstand so much more stress than the average person because testosterone has a feedback loop where it switches off cortisol. So if you've got optimal testosterone, it'll actually help you better deal with stress long term. So it's why it's so critical to have, like, once you drop that testosterone, let's say guys competing using exogenous hormones, well, once you drop that testosterone back down through the floor to practically zero, once you take away that foreign hormone, until you reboot the natural system, you're basically operating with practically no testosterone and heaps of cortisol, which is the worst. You feel rubbish all the time. You stack on a heap of body fat, you stack on fluid, you're not building muscle well, you're not recovering well. And so quite often it leads to this cycle, unfortunately, where then people jump straight back on and haven't done the proper time, or, and unfortunately feel like they can't feel good without a lot of these substances, right? And so it's really, really important to, I suppose, know how to optimize your hormones naturally, because long term, I would like to think in the fitness industry, we can talk to people about what's after the after photo. Instead of before, we see the before and afters all the time. Here's your glow up, here's your stage transformation. What's after the after photo? What does a sustainable, healthy life look like with you still in great shape, walking around at a good body fat level with great energy, with great hormones, with good libido? What does that look like? How do you get there? Because that's more interesting than how do you look good in a 6-week photo shoot, and then you've tanked your hormones, you're stressed, you rebound, gain all that body fat back. It's way more fulfilling when you can work with someone and go, let's get you into stage shape, but then also reverse diet you out, put you in amazing shape, get your biomarkers back, get your hormones back, and allow you to maintain that shape for the next 20 years, not 20 weeks. That's what really gets me going. I love that stuff.
Yeah, it's massive in the bodybuilding industry, isn't it? You see it happen so commonly, and obviously you've got the hormonal aspect as well as the emotional aspect of trying to regain what is normal. And it's just insane the impact that has on people. Almost where, I'm a big advocate for bodybuilding. I think it can do a hell of a lot of positive things, but I'm also consciously aware that, and I've seen it do a hell of a lot of negative things to people, depending on personalities, mindsets, rebound, lifestyle experience, all these things where almost once you reach a certain level of physique and you're in a position where you are almost, the best you've ever looked, the confidence, is through the roof, and everything's firing on all cylinders, to a point of returning back to somewhat normality, or even you fucked your hormones and you're so far beyond normality that you end up more overweight, more depressed, because you're always comparing back to what you previously were once. So the whole emotional state just becomes so catastrophic that they just fall apart as a human.
And you see it unfortunately with females competing, it's so much harsher on their biology as well, because you've got to think, when you look at female hormones, right, the hierarchy is that with their hormones are more susceptible to stress, in that if you think about their main priority biologically is reproduction. That's a big part of their biology. So when you look at if the body is always asking ourselves, have we got enough food? Are we safe? Have we got enough energy to actually reproduce and so on? If you put someone in a prolonged calorie deficit with really high stress, doing hours of cardio, hours of training, put caffeine and fat burners and pre-workouts on top, all of that cortisol the nervous system is going, well, I'm under stress. It's not a safe time to reproduce, and it down-regulates their primary hormones. And this is why you hear women talking about all the time. They'll go through a comp prep and they'll often lose their cycle altogether. And it's because this suppressive effect of stress is actually down-regulating estrogen and progesterone. And it gets to a point where it down-regulates it so far that they don't actually have enough hormonal load to actually carry out their cycle, to actually have a cycle at all. And it shuts them down. It's crazy. And quite often as well, if they don't repair afterwards and get back into a place of eating enough nutrients for their body, getting their body fat up a bit higher as well, that can be long term. I've spoken to females who have come off stage and who haven't had their period for a year afterwards.
I've had a hell of a lot longer.
And you're like, the biological cost of that is huge on fertility, on stress, on your stress hormones, on your body fat, on your thyroid function, everything. So, men, 100%, we suffer, and coming off testosterone, we suffer massively. But for females too, just the biology is not designed to be at extremely low body fat levels and in extreme calorie deficits, and with caffeine and stimulants and hours of training a week. It just wreaks havoc, And so a lot of the time, you see it so often where they'll get on stage, they'll look fantastic, but they've been run into the ground, and it can take a lot of the time. Unfortunately, you see the poor things. It can take years to get back into the shape they were even when they started the prep, because the rebound weight gain is so bad, the fluid retention is so bad, the thyroid is so slow, they're just stacking on body fat, they're feeling awful, the confidence is gone. So it's this crazy thing you see, the before and after photo. I want to see after the after photo get healthier for people and be talked about more.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Obviously, as a business owner, and I've dived into this whole world of entrepreneurship, and changing, the perspectives of not essentially working for the government on a, $38, an hour kind of thing, and just wanting more for myself. And obviously, you've kind of done your same in building your own empire with Paramedics. What kind of things have you experienced throughout the process of building a business with, late nights, stresses, all those kind of things, and what does it actually take to be a successful entrepreneur?
Oh man, I don't think you can actually even. It's like if you could go back to your younger self and tell them what it's going to take. I don't know if I could have done it again. Like if you look at the extremes you have to go through and what you're willing to do to get there. If I went back to 25-year-old Will and said, mate, this is what's ahead of you. Here's your decisions. Here's what it's going to look like. Man, it's hard. It's so like me starting, I had a contract that I wanted to take on with a very large national retailer. And I was at the time, had no business background at all. This thing was, I just loved making my own products and because I was, like I said, I could read papers and so on. I loved learning about the body and how it worked, and making products that would help that became, a really nice passion project. I had a shot at a contract, right? And this is an idea of how hard it was. I went all in on this thing, right? And you have to have a massive risk tolerance as an entrepreneur if you're starting a business. And I went a little bit overboard. I went, well, this is a large national retailer. They have 100 locations. This could be huge. So I went all in on stock, and I got $250,000 of debt. So I went out and got credit cards, maxed them out, got car loans saying it was for a car to a bank, and didn't buy cars, bought stock with it. We borrowed from grandparents, borrowed from friends and family, every way I could to get money, right? And started the business day one at $250K of debt. So then the repayments on that alone put such a pressure on you, because you basically got a mortgage of debt from day one. Now, the business hadn't produced a cent right yet. Now, that contract was meant to, then led on to us getting a national promotion where they said, okay, here's a national special. If you go well, we're going to roll you out, and you basically have your path to success paved for you. Got to the end of the promotion. They went, look, it went really well, mate, but we're not going to go ahead. And I had 250 grand worth of stock sitting there that was meant to support this rollout and me getting this contract, and the contract fell through. So I'm stuck there with all this stock. I have no idea how to sell it. I'm like in practically no stores at the time at all. I'm just there going, what the fuck am I going to do? Because I'm going to go bankrupt before I even start. Day one, I'll literally have to go into bankruptcy. And so from there, I went, well, shit, I have no choice but to sell, or literally I am bankrupt, right? And at the time, I was married at the time previously, and it put so much strain on the relationship. I ended up in divorce as well. And I was running the business out of the spare room of that house right at the time. So all this stock was crammed in a single car garage, crammed in spare bedrooms, built up around the walls. It was like just because it was a lot of stock that I bought with all this debt, expecting a large national rollout. And anyway, through the divorce, the house had to sell, and so I didn't have anywhere to hold the stock. But because I had to go all in to make this thing work, to make those repayments, I had to start going out and actually trying to sell product to other stores so I could pay my bills. I couldn't work a normal job either, so I was unemployed, right? But I couldn't draw an income because the business had so much debt. So I had no income. I think the most I earned on my end of year tax return, right? I earned less than 40 grand a year for the next 7 years.
Wow.
32 grand, 38 grand, 34K, 38, 41K. I was barely scraping by for the next 7-year grind. I couldn't afford staff, so I had to do it all myself. I would go out and sales rep in stores. I would do seminars. I'd do whatever I could, chase sessions at a gym. I'd work weekends. I'd work 24/7 trying to move product because I had to, because I was just broke and drowning in debt. And then when the house sold, I couldn't, well, you can't go to real estate and say, hey, give me a lease to a place to rent because you haven't got a job. So it got to a point where I went, oh shit, well, the only place I could get to was living at a friend's house after that. So we ended up with a share house. And same situation, another guy in his 20s who, being self-employed, couldn't get a lease either. So his brother had a house. We ended up moving there. So we're in a share house. And for a year, we didn't even own a TV in that house. We literally gutted all the furniture. We drilled whiteboards into the walls and just made basically a shark tank. All we had as the lounge room was a table with 4 laptops around it, and we sat around and we just worked. From the second we woke up, we'd roll out of bed, go to gym, come back and just work until we fell asleep. And we'd do that for a year, right? That lease then ran out because it was still his brother's, but it was a private lease still. That lease ran out. Again, still no job, still no income, still no pay. couldn't get another lease, couldn't rent. And it got to a point where I was like, fuck, I'm genuinely, like it was like I had to move out on the Tuesday and it was the weekend. And I'm going, fuck, look, we genuinely have no plan B. The stock was getting to a point where we were like, we can't fit this in a normal garage either. We have to do something. So we found a lease for like 15 grand a year for a tiny little shed in an industrial area. That was going to be our first warehouse, right? It was like 140 square meter, little shoebox thing. And it was next to an industrial facility, next to a big metal fabrication shop, next to a gym, interestingly enough, as well. And we thought, fuck it, let's just make that the warehouse. Well, we ended up not being able to get a place, and we probably couldn't afford it even if we did. So I ended up moving into the warehouse and just slept in the warehouse for 6 months.
Wow.
So I was homeless for that whole time because and we weren't allowed to live in there. The landlord was going to evict us because the lease was in an industrial area. You're meant to. It's not zoned for residential. You're not meant to live in it. So we had an emergency shower because it was an industrial area. So we had an emergency shower downstairs, a toilet and a sink, and so went to Kmart, bought a microwave and a kettle. And couldn't meal prep anything because couldn't cook, and couldn't set anything up to cook because it's not allowed. You're not allowed to look like you live there. From 5 a.m, the gym next door would start classes, so the boomboxes would go off and they'd just start blasting music from 5 in the morning, and they had classes until 8 o'clock at night. And across from us was a 24-hour-a-day metal fabrication shop for mining, so they were grinding steel and welding and fabrications and trucks going in and out literally 24 hours a day. So you'd be sleeping in a tin shed. In summer, it'd be fucking baking hot. And you're grinding and welding in the background. And then the gym, you only get about 6 hours between the gym closing and opening to actually try and sleep. And that was it. And it basically packed every order. You'd wake up and you'd go to gym and you'd come back and you'd practically, you'd pack orders. I'd try and hustle the orders myself. I'd pack every box. I'd do the invoicing, the bookkeeping, because I couldn't afford bookkeepers or accountants. I would go and personally hand pack all the stock, either drive it locally because I couldn't afford the freight, deliver it wherever I could. Then I'd have to go out and try and sales rep. And eventually got to a point where we went, oh, look, well, there's an opportunity that's come up where there's a friend trying to get out of, he has a supplement store that was closing down and he wanted to get out of it. And he said, look, I'll give it to you for literally just the stock on the shelf. It's 10 grand. And I didn't have 10 grand, but I went, fuck it, I'll make it work. And this supplement store was in Canberra. I went, all right, cool. I'll give it this a run. Fuck it. Supplement store, supplement brand. Excellent. This is going to be really, really good. This might turn things around. Well, Canberra at the time, then COVID hit. And so the store, and then there was a flood, and then there were bushfires. So the store closed down, but we were stuck paying the lease for the next 3 years at $5,000 a month. So I burned minimum, it was trading for about 4 or 5 months before all this shitstorm happened, but I would have burned easily 100 grand on that exercise. And I didn't have 100 grand to burn. So through all this, I still couldn't afford staff. I think the first person I got was a box packer for that shoebox of warehouse we had, but we outgrew the warehouse, so we had to go to another one eventually. And yeah, essentially in all this time, man, it was that store in Canberra. I would sales rep, pack orders, invoice, go to the stores, go to weekends, do sale days, drive to Canberra on the Friday afternoon, so 5 hours to Canberra, open the store, work Saturday till close, work Sunday till close, drive home Sunday night, and then sales rep again, Monday through to Friday. It was 7 days a week for like 6 months before that store closed and COVID hit. And by the time COVID hit, I was grateful for it. I was like, fuck, I cannot get in a car again. I was driving 100,000 Ks a year. Like I was burning through cars because I couldn't afford a new car, so I had to get second-hand cars. And I'd buy a car with like 100,000 Ks on it, 200,000 Ks on it because that's all you could afford. And I'd burn it out in 6 months. I'd put 100,000 Ks on it.
That's insane. And I hear so many business owners and things on social media, and I speak to a lot of different people. A lot of the successful people that do end up, building businesses that end up working out have stories like this.
Oh, man,
where they're in significant amounts of debt. And it's almost like when you're pushed into that position where it's absolutely all or nothing, there is no plan B.
Yeah.
You will put yourself in such an insane position where you will work 20 hours a day, every day, back to back to back, just to be able to live. And you're in a constant state of survival mode.
It is. It's survival too. It's so, the problem with socials now is Instagram's glorified business and entrepreneurship to such an extent where people, you see online, people will start a business and then the next week they're buying a Lambo, and it's all like, it's been 10 years now, right? And like, there's no Lambos in the driveway, right? I mean, like, it's a grind for that decade, and just get your head above water, through there. And then like in the business climate that is Australia, it's, with taxes and with GST and with paying staff and payroll tax and all the insurances and everything that you need. And I've got sales reps, so I've got cars and fuel cards, and, you've got vehicles and tolls and all the fuel and all, like, the amount of expenses that go into it and so on, and you're running a team as well and trying to get them to perform and you're trying to invest in them, it's like just a non-stop, constant weight that you just carry around all the time.
That's what I've found. Like that kind of dives into the whole aspect of, burnout and the pressures that you do have. And I think, I wouldn't change anything for working for myself now after working for the government for however long. It's easy. I turn up, I go home, there's no homework, I get paid.
Yeah.
When you work for yourself, you turn up to work.
And you probably don't get paid.
And you might not even get paid. And it is a case of like everything that you put in comes back to you. So if you do nothing, you get nothing. And that's why I think just do not switch off. And when you think that you might have, even a moment, of time, I'm never present. No matter if I'm on holidays, if I'm, trying to enjoy or do something for myself now, I know within myself, my personal relationships, I'm never present. But I also know that there's a future ahead, which hopefully, maybe at some stage, will allow that. But I think it's just, because I wake up now and I've got a purpose and a passion and I'm following that purpose and passion. That's the only reason I'm able to, put in so much time and effort, because I'm not building someone else's business. I'm building my own.
It's got to have, man. It becomes more about, I think, when you look at the 10-year mark, and if you look at some of the more the giants in the industry who are successful, right? It has to become about doing meaningful work and having purpose, because like you can't survive that level of fucked of being homeless, sleeping in warehouses, and like in private rentals and divorces and all the stuff that happens, right? You can't survive that if you don't have a different fuel system. I mean, early on it can be, fuck it, I'm going to prove everyone wrong, or it might be I've got a chip on my shoulder, or I need to prove myself. Whatever it is, you see different people get into it for different reasons. Like I'll prove them all wrong, or whatever it is. But like eventually you run out of that fuel, and it'll only get you so far. And I can say that firsthand. And it's why I talk about burnout so passionately. I do workshops, events, seminars, podcasting like this, all about stress and I think people probably get the impression, if they didn't know my backstory, that I do it like I'm preaching. You should be living on a yoga mat and just be purely zen all the time and don't stress at all. And like I'm not doing it from my ivory tower, right? Like I've done this, I've lived it, and it's broken me in half dozens of times a year, probably for the last 10 years. Like I've been so burnt out, I can't get off the fucking couch, but I have to get up and drive 5, 6, 8 hours. Last year I did 115 nights in hotels. I did 14 flights. I drove 90,000 Ks, and I was interstate 6 times. Overseas 4 times. And all on business. And when you do that, you're tired at a soul level. You're not tired at a level of like normal, I'm just a bit dusted. No, like I pulled up at the end of last year and went, fuck this. I flew so close to the sun, I've singed, I burnt, everything was cooked. And so when I talk about burnout, I'm not doing it from like a, I've lived it. And
that's a massive testament to your resilience as well. And I've never heard that story of you essentially being hundreds of $1,000s in debt with no foreseeable job, no knowledge or experience in how to sell. And basically, I just got a vision of you laying in a warehouse, in a hot 40-degree warehouse with all this stock that you don't even know how to sell with debt. After going through a divorce.
Man, it's brutal.
Man, that's crazy, isn't it? To be able to pull yourself through that. So now, kind of going through that experience yourself, and I guess diving in and being very passionate about helping other people and bringing some awareness about burnout. I know that. I've heard you speak about things, and burnout sometimes isn't foreseen to what you may think it is.
Yeah, and that's a very common misconception too. I seem to think that people only think they're redlining if they can't get out of bed, or if they have to go to the doctor, or if they picture burnout as I've collapsed in a pile, I can't get up. It's not at all. It's this slow leaching of the color and joy from life. It's where things get less excited. You wake up with less drive to want to do things. The motivation starts dropping. The energy starts dropping. You get a phone call from a friend that you'd normally want to have a mad-hour conversation with and catch up, and instead you screen the call. It's your parents invite you out for lunch on a Sunday, and you're too exhausted to take it, so you just cancel it, right? It's your partner wants you to take them out for a date night midweek, but you know that if you're out late one night, you just don't have enough energy to wake up the next morning and go to work. It's these little things that show up. It's the social life that you continually put on hold for months at a time because you just don't have the bandwidth to hang out with someone and socialize. And none of that looks outwardly like burnout per se. But what it is essentially, if you think about yourself like a battery, you've only got so much capacity to take on anything, whether that's social life, personal life, whether that's business life. It all comes from the same place. You got one battery, right? And if you're at 100%, you start your day, every little thing takes a little bit. Your staff, your team, your customers, your life, your partner, your kids, your whatever. It all takes from that, right? And burnout is where that battery where you would normally recharge to 100% each morning because of the crappy sleep, the corrosion of long-term stress, the living on stimulants, the pushing yourself further than you should have. You start each day at 95, then 90, then 85%. And 85% still feels pretty close to 100. 85 still feels pretty good, but it's not 100. And over time, your capacity gets less and less and less. And it gets to a point where you're just in Groundhog Day by the end of it. Every day looks the same. You haven't got the drive anymore to really get yourself out of the rut you dig yourself, but you know you're digging yourself into a rut. And you're getting more and more reliant on caffeine. And what used to get you through no longer does it. You used to be able to have one coffee a day, you're cool. Then it went to 2 coffees. Then it went to 2 double shots. Then it went to coffee and a coffee at lunchtime and a pre-workout at night. And it's just this slow, gradual creeping over weeks and months. And before you know it, you've just got, you're screening your mates' calls. You've got no social life. You're sitting on the couch. You don't want to hang out with your family on the weekends or your partner. You're saying, look, let's just rebook date night for next week. I just don't have the bandwidth. I just want to go and sit in a dark room at the end of the day. I don't want to, that's burnout. It's not this collapse in a pile, movie scene. It's not. It's so funny. It shows up in so many ways, and it takes just little bits of color out of your day everywhere. Yeah. And every business owner can identify with it, where your social life is just zero, and you've just got zero to give. And like you've seen that phone call come through, and your parents are calling you on a weekend, and you're like, I just don't have the gas to actually answer this.
Yep. Exactly.
And it's sad, it's really, really fucking sad. And so, it gets perceived as it's so different. And so when I talk about burnout with business owners in particular, business owners are so used to living in stress that it becomes their norm and they become numb to it. Yeah, the slow background noise of stress, they're used to it. So it doesn't jump out as anything unusual. Like after that last 10 years I've been through, divorces and homelessness and fucking all, nothing phases me anymore. So which is a problem because if you have a disgusting stress tolerance, doesn't mean the stress isn't there. It doesn't mean your nervous system isn't getting cooked. I'm only 35 and I'm fully grey. You know what I mean? It's there.
You know what? It's insane. Everything that I've ever heard you say about this whole world of, building business and burnout and the signs and symptoms that you experience, I've fully been a part of that experience myself, working 20-hour days back to back to back, relentless with, you got 50 clients' work that you've got to do every single week with that constant homework in your head, which even when you're trying to switch off, you've still got the mental brain, which is ticking. So it just does not switch off.
No, it's relentless and it follows you. Like you said, you can be you can be weekends, it can be holidays, doesn't matter. Wherever you are, it follows you, and it's exhausting. It really is. It follows you. And you can't be present then. You can't be in the room. Wherever you are, you're not there. And everywhere where you're driving, it's calls. You get somewhere, you're not even there. It's again, I've got more calls, texts, emails, staff, they all good. Okay, how's the team? Yep, great. How's product? How's the factory? Cool. All right, where am I? I'm here. All right, cool. Camera on, let's shoot. Mad. All right, let's go shoot some content. Cool. Get back in the car. Another 9 calls to make before you get home. Get home, try and be a present partner. And, so it's there's such a different side to business, and I think it gets glorified too much, and so I hammer on about it regularly that it's got a real dark side that really puts people through the ringer. You know what I mean? And people see it blowing up on socials and people buying the Ferraris and buying awesome stuff and living bougie lifestyles and so on. And I just go, that's just so not depictive of what business is. One in a million looks like that, but 90% of businesses close within 3 years. They go bankrupt. They don't or they just run it. It's. So the percentage of businesses that actually make it over $1 million of turnover is 2%. Even to go over $1 million turnover, So when you try and get to this scale, we're in thousands of stores across the country, and we've you got staff in every state, and to get to this point in the time, we're in the top 0.05%, as in 99.95% of businesses have closed by this point. So that doesn't mean, like, when you see us on socials though, or you see a brand on socials going, hey, look how much we're killing it, we're crushing it, look how giant warehouses full of stock and look at that stuff. It's the 1 in a million, that's managed to push through the unrelenting grind. Because if you can't keep up with it, it'll just put you down. It's not like other areas of life where you get an achievement medal, or you get a pat on the back and, oh, well done, or an encouragement award. No, like you either succeed or you just get put down. You go bankrupt.
And it's interesting what you were saying about how now you've been through that experience, you've lived it, and obviously the resilience and the lessons you've learned through that is massive, to a point now where you're kind of in a state where you're saying a lot of things kind of don't phase you, or as opposed to maybe previously, don't have that significant effect on you.
100%.
And I find the same. People always say to you that you're just very relaxed or chill with certain things, and they call it. I've been called what is it? Something optimism, it's negative.
Oh, gotcha.
Because I'm too optimistic.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, you have to be, and I think that's a good trait to have in business ownership, because you have to be, because you've got to be have this disproportionate amount of optimism, because you have to think, what's the best case scenario, and how could this look like in 12 months' time, or what can this look like in 2 years' time, and you're going for this thing that's never actually there, this North Star, but you have to be wide a bit crazy to be able to do it, because you have to be optimistic, because if you're not, pessimistic people don't last, because it's already such a game of numbers stacked against you, that if you even have an inch of this might not work, or maybe it won't, or maybe I can't do that. Well, Henry Ford said it. He's like, the man who says he can and he can't, they're both probably right.
Yep, that's exactly right.
It's like you will, if you give yourself even that. I often look back and I go, I think the only reason I managed to get through it, I didn't have a plan B. If I stopped at any time, I'd just go bankrupt. I'd be fucked. So there was no plan B, because I burnt the boats when I took on that mountain of debt, got divorced, and ended up homeless. There was no other. If we couldn't afford to pay that lease, we were literally I was out in the street. So it's so I often think, I'm like, could I do it again? I honestly think. I don't know if I don't think I could, man. I think I don't want to put it that way.
Family of 9 to 5 in a country town.
Yeah, man. And look at this, and I can't blame people for that now. I look at it when I was growing up. I was like, how can more people not want to start businesses for themselves? And after doing it, I look at it and I go, you know what? There's a lot to be said for someone who can find all the meaning and purpose they need in family and in having that steady job and just being present for their family. And so I used to look at that and go, oh, how could you do that? But I actually get it to a degree now. If I look at it and I can see, there is a lot to be said for someone who can be, happy where they're in their life, where they've, they're working something meaningful, hopefully, and they've got a great family life and great social life and all those, because all that stuff goes out the window quite often with business. So I see it from both sides of the fence now, having been doing it so long. Could I ever be an employee or go back into that? No, but yeah, I don't know. I think I've just been around long enough to see entrepreneurship is it's a lifelong choice to opt for the harder road versus the easy one. And I'm sure hopefully the next 10 years looks very different to the first 10. So fingers crossed, we're doing this podcast in 10 years time and it's all about, hey man, this is awesome now. Now the Lambos are here and we're killing it.
What is your direction now? Obviously, in the supplement market, there's so many different brands, there's so many different businesses that are trying to make changes, separate themselves from the crowd. What is your direction with Primavolics, and how are you trying to separate that so it does grow?
I'm trying to create, man. What I've done is I'm building tools that will address every handbrake that I see the average person meet. Right. So if the everyday person, I'm trying. That's why I've got a series called the Everyday series, Everyday Sleep, Everyday Health, Everyday. The Everyday series was designed to get the average person and the everyday person and see what their handbrakes are and try and fix them. Right. And so I try and do it a little bit differently. Like when I said before, way back earlier on, want versus need. Right. There is a huge, crowded, busy supplement industry, but they're selling what people want, not what the people need. I'm making what they need, right? I'm making the things that fix the core root problems, and that's almost entirely absent from our industry. At least in the sports nutrition industry, it's almost practically non-existent. People are talking about fat burners and pre-workouts and creatines, and cool. Everything has a place, but I look at what people should be looking at as their first supplementation. So often people start the gym and the first things they do is buy a pre-workout and a creatine, or a pre-workout and a protein powder. And I'm like, fuck no. If you only took one supplement, take a sleep aid. Look at something for gut health. Look at something for testosterone for the guys. That's going to impact 20 different areas of your life in a positive way, right? So where are we now if we're different? We're sort of like the odd ones out, like I feel often like I'm the outsider in the industry, where the industry is all about just high stim this and heavy pre-workouts and this thing will blow your face off. And I'm out here going, guys, I'm going to slow up. You need to be looking at, actually slowing down, rebuilding yourself and making yourself healthy so you can get back in the fight and run at the pace. If I don't obsess over my health, I couldn't possibly do what I do in a day. Could fucking just break in half. Like you have to. So what am I doing now? It makes this different, man. I'm trying to do pretty much everyone's running that way. I'm trying to run that way. I'm trying to go, what's pretty much the opposite of all of the messaging around supplements right now. I couldn't give a fuck about creatine gummies and the next protein powder. And I'm a man who sells hundreds of metric tons of protein powder, right? Love the stuff. But I really do think that what people need is what we should be supplying more of as an industry. So it changed from what I'm making these things that'll help people and I want to try and move those. Now it's almost like a moral obligation piece. Like we're almost like the guardians of the industry going, well, we should know better. Customers should come to us for advice and people in the industry should be telling them, this is what you need. You reach your pre-workout. No, bad. You haven't earned that 500 milligrams of caffeine. Have a sleep aid. Have something to look after your hormones. Have a look after your gut health. Have something that, so
it's longevity, isn't it?
It is. It's sustainability.
It's longevity and sustainability.
It is. It's trying to give people a chance at this thing, at being able to run as fast as they want to at life. You know what I mean? Like if you want to run as insanely fast as I did for that 10 years, or again, maybe growing up in the country town and just wanting to have a great life with your family. Either way, you're going to have handbrakes in the form of health. You'll either pay it now or you'll pay it later. The tax of neglecting your health, right? And a lot of people, unfortunately, in the high performance space, they sell their health to get the success. Then when they have the success, they use that success to buy back their health because they realize they've lost it along the way. And so, yeah, man, now it's different. Now it's about being like the guys in the industry that are putting out content and putting out messaging around how to be we're pretty much like the contrarians. We're like the opposite to everyone else. Everyone else is just selling fucking pre-workouts and caffeine. And I'm trying to go, no, we need to actually look after the things that will help you long-term be healthy.
What's your thoughts on this? Whenever I think supplements, I think of your classic gym bro or, chick that's just getting in there training. And that's what I associate with supplements. Whether that's proteins, pre-workouts, fat burners, anything like that.
Yep.
But now I'm starting to see that maybe this isn't just for the people who are going to the gym, because that's not everyone's passion. They may have other things, whether it's, sports or team sports or, a particular hobby that's where they get their exercise, and activity in. But they may also be involved heavily in the corporate world or at desk jobs.
Yes.
Do all these supplements work for people?
Man, we have, out of our, we did a survey on 1,500 customers, right? And 40% of them were business owners, C-suite executives like CEOs, CFOs. They were high performers, like they were usually in senior management or above, or they were self-employed. So either entrepreneurs, business owners, self-employed execs, they were high performers, right? And every one of them were buying things for stress, for sleep, and for energy. And if I went through that list, I wouldn't be surprised if half of them don't even train. The next chunk under that, 37% of the rest of them were tradies. Were trades business owners, more specifically, owning small building companies, small tiling companies, these guys were in physically demanding jobs, and their job is their workout, right? And they're just trying to get through the day because they know they don't feel like they used to in their 20s when they're in their 30s and their 40s, but their livelihood directly is impacted by it. So they're using supplementation to help, hey, how can I feel better throughout the day? How can I get more energy without going to the servo and getting another Red Bull today? Hey, I'm currently living on dare ice coffees from 7-Eleven. How can I have something better for me, throughout the day? And it's protein shakes versus sugary drinks and caffeine. So, man, it's funny. 77% of them aren't using it for gym. 77% of 1,500 people were not using supplements for gym. They were using it to show up in their daily life better, with more energy, with less stress, and recover from it.
I guess that links in with your whole purpose, isn't it?
It does.
And the majority of the population.
And they say you'll figure this out in business too, man. You create a mirror for yourself, right? Like I said before, any limitations you have will show up in your business. Well, the other nice side of that is the person you are best designed to help is an earlier version of you. So if you're putting out into the world the messaging that I am, I've attracted people. The average person is age 36. I'm 36 this year. The median of 1,500 people, our average age was 36. 36-year-old, 70% of them have an ABN or are high performers or trade or self-employed. So it's 36-year-old business owners. That's myself, right? Without even knowing it. Now, they're all different walks of life. I've also got practitioners and coaches and naturopaths and heaps of different people, like hundreds of thousands of customers, right? But it's interesting. So many of them have the exact same pain points as me. Stress, energy. Like for me now, supplementation is how can I show up at this level where I can be on camera today for 6 hours of output and be sharp all fucking day and just be able and just show up and run a team properly and confidently with energy. And if I walk into a room and run a meeting, I want to command the room and I want to be able to show up with energy. Then if I go to the gym later on, I want to be able to go to the gym or get up in the morning and run 10Ks and be able to bounce back before the kid even gets up. Like I want to. So yes, I mean, supplementation has always been more gym and muscle and performance. And I was a bodybuilder, so like that was it for me for a lot of years too. But when I look at what I'm supplementing for now, it's life. And out of that 1,500 people we surveyed, same with them. It was crazy, man. The group of like the Fitspo crowd we call the Avatar, which was like 18 to 25-year-old content creators or people interested in gym as their main interest in the things they ticked. That was like 8%.
Yeah.
That's it. 8%. 92% aren't that, which is wild.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Yeah, that is interesting. And there's a bit of a trend that I find within myself. If I'm taking supplements, I'm in a positive state of flow with everything. So my business is booming, my mindset's sharper, I'm doing the things I should be doing for my body. It's a snowball effect. But on the return of that, I've also been through the big periods where it's the complete opposite, where it's almost an all or nothing state. So if I'm not taking supplements, I'm not training, I'm not eating healthy, I'm like, fuck it. If I'm not doing one, I may as well not do anything. And for me, honestly, I would say that sometimes just the routine of having certain nutritional things, including supplements, will completely change the directory of my day. Like, if I'm waking up and the first thing that you do is, you're filling yourself with these healthy things from hydrations to greens to, whatever nutritional things that you need to hormonally support yourself with, it flows on to the rest of the day, whether it is placebo or whether it does actually have a functional effect on you. But
it does, man. It massively does. It sets you up in such a different way. Like even knowing you're waking up and you're having something good for you. Like when we say it's not even about gym, it's so right, mate. Like even I love just seeing the 40-year-old mother of 3 walk in who's never touched a dumbbell in her life and probably won't. And just, and grab something like our Everyday Health, our greens product, right? And she's like, just even that step. I now know she's going to have some probiotics, some digestive enzymes, so gut health's going to start to improve. I've got a full sports multi in there, so I know she's getting some magnesium and B12 and zinc and manganese and trace minerals and so on. I know she's getting organic greens in there as well. Like just that, and then she knows she's starting her day going, oh, I'm having something good for me. I might make another good decision. I might not skip breakfast now. I might have breakfast instead and have a good breakfast. It's healthy. Oh, cool. Okay, I might get a decent lunch this time instead of skipping it and swapping it for coffee. Oh, great. Yeah. So it has this big flow-on effect where if you're doing something good for yourself at the start of the day, I think that's why gym is such a great anchor, because it's doing something for yourself that's positive at the beginning of the day. And then you compound it with taking the supplements to be good for you as well and drive on through. And always trying to make yourself better in every aspect, and it flows on to all areas of life, right?
It does massively. I always say that they're all linked in.
Massively.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, man. So I love it, and it's just so funny. 92% of our customers aren't buying it for gym, and it's so funny it's such a thing. But for myself now, mate, the big priorities that I see with people is it doesn't matter who you are, if I can help you with your sleep, if I can help you with your micronutrients, if I can help you with your gut health, hormones, like it doesn't matter what you do. Like I said, you could be one of those, the 37% who are tradies, you could be the CEO. Like last week I had a customer who was the CEO of a bank, huge bank, like properly fucking massive bank. And CEO of that. And he's been on a 6-month subscription to Everyday Primal. And he's using a natural testosterone support product because I'm assuming at his level where you're running a multi-billion-dollar bank, you want to show up with energy, with vitality, you want to be feeling better, you want to be I don't even know if the guy trains, but I know that he wants to feel better because if he shows up and he's 1% better, that might be $1 million that year. So the stakes are there, right? And so it's like trying to help. I get really excited about helping people at that level try and do things, try and go to the next level, but support them there so they're not just burning themselves in the ground to get there.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, yeah, that's been an amazing discussion, and I think you've provided some fantastic insight to the struggles, the challenges, and how to kind of overcome some of those things. You're a wealth of knowledge, and you know, I've kind of seen some of the amazing things that you're doing, and I think it's a great direction for the world these days. So
thank you, mate. I hope in a world of noise that we're trying to make a bit of a message out there to give people a bit of a life raft, you know, because they're just drowning in information now, and it's overwhelming. And I'm trying to do a lot more content like this where we can jump on and go, hey, take an hour, sit down, slow down, and we'll break some stuff down for you. So, mate, thanks for coming on too. It was awesome hearing your story, and so glad we could unpack everything from health, hormones, nutrition, training, competing, all of it, business ownership. Amazing episode, man. Thank you so
awesome.
much.
Cheers, man. Good
Unreal.
stuff.